Hey everyone, this is Dr. Drizzle, and welcome to the National Parks Expedition Challenge. Today, we're at Kennesaw Mountain National Battlefield Park in Kennesaw, Georgia, and we're here with a new friend, our ranger friend, Ranger Jake. Ranger Jake, thanks for having us here today.
Absolutely, Dr. Drizzle, thank you for being here. We are so happy to have you guys.
And I guess it's a little apropos that it is actually drizzling a little bit while we're here. We're excited to introduce this park to our kids around the country, but before we do that, I'm interested to know a little bit about your background and how you got into the National Park Service.
Absolutely, thank you for asking. So, it started, I will say, after I graduated high school. I didn't quite, as some people may understand, I didn't quite know what I wanted to do. So I was kind of working a few odd jobs, and then I met a young man that was actually in school, and I asked what he was in college, and I asked what he was doing for the summer, and he said that he was going to Alaska to work with the National Park Service and actually work in biological research up there. And I thought that sounded so cool. And I asked him what his major was in college, and he said that he was an outdoor recreation major. And I said, well, now I know what I wanted to do. And I did a little research, and it seemed like it just checked all the boxes that I didn't know I had. And so I started my undergraduate degree as a recreation major, and I graduated with after about 4 years or so, graduated with a natural cultural resource management or outdoor recreation degree, undergraduate. And then a few years later, I started graduate work with the University of Montana in wilderness management. Around that time, to get my feet wet with the National Park Service, I actually had an internship with the Student Conservation Association at Natural Bridges National Monument in the southeastern corner of Utah. And that just really reinforced my love for the National Park Service. I started my graduate work, and I found this job that on usajobs.gov for Kennesaw Mountain National Battlefield Park. It was still in my home state of Georgia, and it looked really interesting, and I applied, and I've been here ever since. And this is the best job I've ever had.
I love that, and I love that you were inspired by someone that you had just met, right?
Absolutely.
And they encouraged you to try this. And I think that's a good thing for our kids to know, that sometimes other people can be our inspiration.
Absolutely.
Now, did you love history as a child?
And I will be completely honest with you, Dr. Drizzle, I did not. I thought it was interesting, but it was not my favorite subject. I was actually more interested in outdoors and ecosystems and kind of environmental stuff. I loved camping, and I felt like that was a good jumping off point. And so I knew that I anticipated maybe a challenge coming to a battlefield park. But when I got here, it's great that you said find an inspiration from other people. The other rangers that were already here and very knowledgeable volunteers quickly showed me that history was not only important, vitally important, but fascinating. And so I became what I would call an amateur history buff upon arrival here, and I've never looked back.
I love that. Well, we are here at Kennesaw Mountain National Battlefield Park, and there's so much history here. There's so many natural resource things here, but we want you to tell us about this park and how it became part of the National Park Service.
Sure. So, and I know it's kind of like taking a sip from a fire hose when you talk about these special places, and we have history that goes so far back. In North Georgia, of course, as many of the other special places, national parks you visited, national park sites, was home to Native Americans as far back as some believe 400 AD. Specifically in this area, we have evidence just north of here in the Etowah Indian mounds of the mound builders of the Proto Creek that were here. That takes us, that civilization takes us almost all the way up to the 1500s, where we get the first kind of European settlement done by the Spanish, Hernando de Soto. And unfortunately, that wipes out a lot of the Native Americans in the area. The remaining tribes kind of band together, and we get the Creek. We get the Creek Indians that were kind of in this area, and that takes us. The Creek Indians kind of inhabited this general part of North Georgia up until the 1700s, when more European settlement kind of pushes the Cherokee Indians down into Creek territory. And we have some fighting between that. The Cherokee kind of take over, and they are here in this general area largely up until the 1830s. So what's happening kind of between then is we have even more European settlement moving into the area, and then we have, of course, a big gold rush that happens further north of here in Dahlonega. Now, while that meant wealth, that also meant kind of more conflict between the white settlers, the European settlers, and the Cherokee that were still here. And unfortunately, in the late 1830s, just after Cobb County is established in the early 1830s, we have the Trail of Tears, which you guys may have heard about, which is the forced removal of the Cherokee to reservations in Oklahoma, further west. And after that, the Cobb County area kind of began to kind of blow up, and we have a lot of farming, a lot of agriculture happening here, subsistence farming, and it just kind of builds and builds. The population of Cobb County builds all the way up until the 1860s. In the 1860s is where our major story, I say major story, what the park kind of began, begins, and that is the Civil War. The American Civil War starts, of course, in 1861 officially, and Civil War comes to Georgia, comes to Kennesaw Mountain in 1864. So you have the Battle of Kennesaw Mountain, June 27th, 1864, which is part of the Atlanta campaign, which was a major operation that brought Union soldiers from Tennessee all the way down to Atlanta in the summer of '64 in a major offensive against the Confederacy to try and end the war as quickly as possible. And of course, that was William T. Sherman's campaign for Atlanta. So the Battle of Kennesaw Mountain was one of the major battles that happened during that campaign. And after the battle, the forces kind of keep shifting further south. We are just, for the viewers at home, we are just north of Atlanta. So the forces move down and we get the Battle of Atlanta a little bit later in the summer and the fall of Atlanta in September, which is a major blow to the Confederacy. And Union forces occupy the city, and then of course after that, in December of that same year, we have the infamous March to the Sea, the William T. Sherman's March to the Sea, which takes Union forces all the way down from Atlanta, all the way to the southeast to Savannah, Georgia. Now, as Cobb County rebuilds, we kind of push through into the 19th century, or from the 19th to the 20th century. And at that time, we start to see a lot of reunions and reconciliation amongst former Union and Confederate soldiers, as this is now one country. And that's where this story begins. So we're standing actually at one of the major parts of the Battle of Kennesaw Mountain at Cheatham Hill. And just behind me over here is our Illinois Monument. So in 1914, 50 years after the date of the Battle of Kennesaw Mountain, veterans from Illinois got together and purchased a 60 to 66 acre tract of land, which is what we're sitting on now, and erected the Illinois Monument to commemorate the Union soldiers and really the loss of life here. And that tract of land would kind of stay in private hands up until the mid-20s, which it would be then gifted to the War Department, or the Department of Military, which would then shift up into the 1930s with under a proclamation from President Franklin Delano Roosevelt in 1933. All military and battlefield parks then got shifted to be under the National Park Service. Okay. So this became an official, long story long, this became an official part of the National Park Service in 1933. And we have just been growing ever since.
So a lot of history here,
yes,
a lot of stories to be told. Are there any particular stories that stand out to you or that you find very interesting? I know it's kind of hard to ask someone that. It's like choosing your favorite kid. But is there anything that you could share with us?
Oh my gosh. Well, again, there's so much history here. You know, there is... You know, some of the history, when we did our park film, we redid our park film in 2014 to commemorate the 150th anniversary of the battle. And in doing that, a lot of kind of what you could call untold stories up to that point were kind of uncovered. And one that sticks out, well, there's a couple that sticks out. One notable one was a nurse named Emma Stevenson. And she was actually a freed slave who had the opportunity to migrate to freedom and to a northern state, but she actually stayed to help some of the Union soldiers that helped to kind of liberate her and to kind of help in this area. And unfortunately, we have firsthand accounts of several soldiers that she actually helped. They wrote home and talked about the kindness of this nurse and how she was very attentive and how she really just kind of burned the candle at both ends to help these men in their kind of biggest time of need. And unfortunately, because of her proximity to all this sickness, she caught an illness and passed away shortly before the end of the conflict here. But as a sign of respect to her service to the United States military, she's actually interred at the Marietta National Cemetery, along with the soldiers that she helped, some of the soldiers that she helped. And that's to me, that's one of my kind of favorite stories.
I love the idea of the compassion piece to this. This is obviously a story of war, of
Yes.
battle, of strife, but out of that comes these untold stories that we may not have heard of. And I'm sure there's other stories on your website that kids can check out when they're doing some research here. Something that I was really surprised to read about is that this place is huge, like huge. And you guys have 2.6 million visitors a year. You know
Yes,
what?
ma'am.
To me, that makes me think there might be some challenges here that you face as a park staff. Do you have any of those?
Well, yes. As you've probably seen with some of the other parks you visited, there can be a lot of different challenges for us specifically. So our mandate, the reason this park exists is to preserve the history of the battle here and of the Atlanta campaign. But what's also happened is Cobb County, the surrounding area around us, has grown exponentially. And that preservation also had a really fortunate side effect for the local folks, and that is green space, preserved green space. So as you guys probably traveled in the area, you've seen a lot of development around here. But Kennesaw Mountain has remained this beautiful tract, this contiguous green space. And it became, and it is today, the largest contiguous green space in metro Atlanta area. And what that means, we have 3,000 acres of green area and we have 22 miles of trail. And so that brings a lot of people that want to get out of the city, that want to kind of experience the joys, the restorative factors that come from nature. And so they come here. And I like to say we're very popular and we love that, but it does present challenges because our number one mandate is to preserve the history. And by preserving, that it doesn't always mean locking it up tight, but it does mean protecting. And that can go from anything from our monument to the earthworks surrounding the monument to the beautiful memorial fields you see here. And the challenges that we see having such heavy visitation is that it's hard to continue to protect these resources because with the sheer amount of people, everybody has a different idea of kind of how they want to use their park. And we really celebrate that, but we also sometimes our missions butt up against that use. And it is a constant challenge, as I was kind of mentioning to you earlier, our trail system. So one of the things that we try to do is to maintain what we have already. And really improve upon our existing trail system and infrastructure as opposed to expanding it. Because expanding it would mean digging through earthworks, upsetting archaeological remnants, and kind of affecting the resource that we protect here. And so that challenge of keeping, just imagine you're trying to do more with less and you're trying to accommodate more visitation with what you've already got. And so that presented a few unique challenges for sure. And I would say that that is kind of the term loving us to death has been used before. So I'd say that's probably our biggest challenge.
And it's also a military or a battlefield. So a cemetery, if you will, of places. So there's this sacredness or this respectful piece that we have to remember, and I'm sure sometimes people forget that because they're just running on the trails.
Well, I'm so glad you brought that up. In essence, you hit the nail on the head. A national battlefield or military park is managed and on an agency from the National Park Service's standpoint is to be treated as a cemetery, hallowed ground, to be respected of what occurred here. And so when you look at this beautiful field, and this is a beautiful wide open field in a national park. So many people that come here see that and they see picnics, they see football games, they see, grilling out, they see hanging out with their friends, which again, we celebrate people enjoying their national park, but we also ask that the visitors, and we have signs, we have I'll get to that in a second, but we ask visitors to kind of respect the hallowedness and the sacredness of places like this. And one of the ways that we try to really reach that is working with folks like you, and also my job as an interpretive ranger. We provide programming, interpretive programming all over the park to teach folks that may not otherwise know about the resource that they've been jogging, walking their dogs, having picnics, to teach them what happened here, to help make them better stewards. And that goes from everything, again, from programs to signs to digital media. That's one of our biggest weapons in the fight in the fight to educate the folks about their resource.
Well, I have some ideas and I want to share it with our kids to see if they can come up with anything to help you. Is that okay?
Oh, absolutely.
All right, kids. So we're at that time in our videos where we talk about what you're going to do to help this national park. We call it stewardship. So we're going to look at UN Global Goal number 11, which is sustainable cities and communities. And if you read through that goal deeply, you're going to find out it's all about protecting what we have and honoring the places that we are a part of. So knowing that the Kennesaw Mountain National Battlefield Park is in this area and that millions of people come here every year to enjoy the park, but also to enjoy the recreation pieces around here. How can you think of ways that the national park, the staff here, can continue to interpret the history of the park and educate the people that are using this area? So it could be new signage. You could come up with a campaign that would encourage humans to be good humans while they're here. We also know that sometimes us older humans forget those ideas. So maybe you could direct your campaign towards the tiny humans, the ones that are coming up that will be protecting these parks in the future. Maybe you can come up with some wayside signage that gives people time to stop and reflect where they are, but you can write it from your point of view. Think about making this a scavenger hunt, if you will, of ways that people can stop while they're running, and they may have their kids with them and they can read something and they can do something as a family to add to the history of this place or to learn more about the history of this place. This is going to be one of those ideas where you're going to need to do a lot of research. You're going to need to look at a map of this place and sort of see where it fits into this bigger picture. I believe, Ranger Jake, that you said it's about 3,000
3,000
acres of place. So this is a large place. I want you also to know that the maintenance, the people that run the facility, there's not a lot of them, and they take care of this entire place. So how can you encourage people when they have their dogs with them that they're not dropping the bags on the ground? I think it's more of we're going to need the tiny humans to educate the big humans and teach us how to be better stewards. Now, we're further on up in our lifespan, but you guys are just starting. So this place is your future. You're going to bring your families here, your grandchildren here. I know it's hard to think about that, but you are. So I'm excited for what you may create. Ranger Jake, this could be something that you take to a big roundtable meeting with your staff. You may say, hey, we just got another idea.
Oh,
and you
yes.
actually share them. That's what we hope happens. And we've had some kids create some amazing wayside stations with quotes and poetry and stories and things that families can do right there while they're standing. So maybe they'll create some for you too.
Oh, I cannot wait to see what they come up with. We are so excited.
So we can't wait to see your ideas. Make sure you share those with us on social media. All the tags are running across the bottom of the screen. You can tag us at Expeditions in Education, hashtag Nat Park Challenge, and don't forget to tag the Kennesaw Mountain National Battlefield Park, and I guarantee you that Ranger Jake is probably going to see those first.
Absolutely.
This is going to be exciting. I think that maybe in 10 years, because we know that ideas take a while to go through all the things that you have to think about and then the building of the ideas. But you know, kids could come here in 10 years and some of their ideas could be used in this park. And what a great way to become a good steward.
Oh, absolutely. I'm very excited. Very excited.
You know, the parks do belong to everybody, but it's our responsibility, because they do belong to me, then I have to take responsibility of making sure I take care of them too.
Absolutely.
So I can't drop trash, I can't go off trail. I need to be that good steward in all of my actions. These kids are always reaching out to us and saying, hey, Dr. Drizzle, how can I be a park ranger? And we know of no other people better to share this than the actual rangers. So Ranger Jake, if you'll look in that middle camera and just give them a little bit of advice about wearing your flat hat someday.
Well, I would love to, Dr. Drizzle. So there are many avenues to becoming part of the National Park Service. So the one thing that I will mention, I think it's important to know starting out, is that back in the early days of the National Park Service, the National Park Rangers were what we call generalists. One person did a bunch of different jobs. They might do law enforcement, they might do biological monitoring, then they go fix the trails, and then they talk about the stuff and do interpretation. Now everything is a little bit more segmented. Not to say that we still don't have a lot of different jobs, but everything's a little more segmented. So the first step that I tell people in getting involved is you can't just jump in without knowing where you want to go. So I would say try to find a place that inspires you, a place that you like, your local museum, your local state or national park, and volunteer there. Or if you are in a position, if you're a little bit older, maybe a high school student, there are hundreds of different types of internships that you can apply for that might not be much paid, but are still paid internships that you can use to get involved. And those are the perfect ways to get started. And once you actually spend time at these places and kind of narrow down your wants and what you kind of want to do, then the sky's the limit. I mean, there's 420 plus national park sites, and by figuring out what you want to do at these places and then kind of networking, talking to those folks, and then really doing the research on where you want to go. I mean, starting from the ground up, again, the sky's the limit. You can apply for just about anywhere. So I would say that's the best way to get started, and maybe be one of my coworkers one day.
I love that. Thank you for that advice. We say that when your passion and your purpose intersects, you find your mission for life or find your job for life. And they can put on their application, 10 years ago, I gave an idea to the Kennesaw Mountain National Battlefield Park, and they used it. And that might be an extra plus for them getting a job.
You got it. I'd be more than happy to provide a reference.
Well, thank you so much for allowing us to be here today. It is a little drizzly,
yes,
but
ma'am.
It's still a beautiful place. There's great stories that need to be told here, and now our kids have a mission to try to help you with a challenge that you face. So thanks again for having us.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dr. Drizzle.
Thank you so much for joining us. If you're keeping track, this is number 130 for Expeditions in Education, and we're really excited about that. A special thanks to our park rangers for making this possible. So on behalf of Expeditions in Education, Dr. Drizzle and Ranger Jake, we're out of here. Have a great day, everyone.
Bye, guys.